Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. This is an event called Modern Love and Tantra, and I am here with Jan Day, who many of you will know and some might not know. Jan Day is one of the best Tantra teachers in the whole world. I mean, you're my only teacher, so I that's not really based on much, but I think you are. You have been teaching Tantra for 27 years. Mm-hmm. You have been a student of Tantra for about 45 years. Mm-hmm. You have taught and worked with hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people when it comes to love and our sexuality and helping us love each other better and love ourselves better. So I think your hands-on experience of seeing the reality of people's issues and challenges and also delights around love and sex, I would say is pretty unrivaled in terms of how up close you've been with people. So tonight I'll be asking Jan some questions for about an hour, maybe a little bit less, and afterwards we've got time for questions from anyone in the audience. So please use this opportunity. Jan knows so much, so if there's anything you want to ask either about Tantra workshops, or about love and relationships, please do. We've got plenty of time. And I'm Marianne Power. I'm a writer and a journalist, and I was sent to write about a Tantra retreat for a magazine in 2018 by a magazine called Red, and when they first asked if I would go to write about a Tantra retreat, I said absolutely no way would I ever do that, no. I actually wanted to be sick at the thought, and then I realised that the strong reaction was probably a sign that it might be something that would be good for me. So I did my first Tantra retreat in 2018, and it was petrifying and life-changing, and I've since been working with Jan, ever since then, for years, and have written a book called Love Me that includes a lot of my experiences with Jan. So we're just here to have a conversation and keep the questions to the end if that's okay, and they're really all welcome. So hello everyone, and hello Jan.
Hello.
How many people here are brand new to Tantra, haven't done any Tantra, and a bit curious?
Great.
Yeah, great. And there'll be a few people that have done Jan's work as well. So first of all, the most kind of basic question is what is Tantra? Beyond Sting's sex sessions, which is what many of us think of.
Yes, indeed. So Tantra originally was around 600 AD, was an opening up of spirituality to include sexuality, to include everything. And it was the dance of Shiva and Shakti and bringing everything together. So really Tantra was never, and it still isn't, just about sex.
Yeah.
Tantra was about including our sexual nature along with everything else that we are, and using everything to learn and grow and come closer to the sacred, the divine, to God. And the Tantra that I teach would be called Neo-Tantra, and I would call it that. So really it's Tantra that is adapted for our time and our place, and that means that we're willing to be with whatever is arising. And actually there's, in a workshop, unless it was so structured that wasn't allowed, it gives us a place where we can include every aspect of ourselves, including everything about our body, coming into contact with our body, coming into contact with our heart and our feelings, our fears, our sadness, our joys and delights and longings, including our mind, and including our beyond our mind to the divine, so that we include everything from our sexual nature up to spirit, and weaving all of those together. So it is a spiritual path, but it's not one where you have to. It doesn't have really a dogma, I would say, in the sense that in Catholicism or in Protestant Christianity or in Islam, there are particular ways that and beliefs, and I think Tantra is much more opening to learn from every aspect of life.
Yeah.
So the original tantrikas very much they were learning from death. They would often sit in the graveyards, and so they were taking every piece of experience and using it to transcend and become one with God. Yeah.
Whereas in other religions, sex and the body is
Sex
kind
is
of,
out,
that's nothing to do with God. If anything, it can be
Yeah.
a problem.
Exactly. So you could choose. The religions up until then had been very much you can have spirit or you can have sex, but you can't have both.
Yeah.
You have to choose.
Yeah.
And so sex became something a bit hidden, secret, slightly disgusting, not really allowed.
Yeah.
That had to be controlled. That it was recognized as a powerful energy, and it is a powerful energy. But the original, the priests in most religions have therefore tried to quash it, because if you get that energy going, you'll never be able to. It'll distract you. They never saw it as a pathway that would take you all the way to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was it then that you discovered that pathway?
So I came to Tantra really through desperation, because curiously my beginnings were very much disgust with sex. I mean, actually from teenage years until I was in my mid-20s, I was very spiritual. I was into these, I was already practicing quite ascetic, disciplined yoga, like with yogi kind of gurus when I was 20. But like sex was completely not on the cards, and I was very interested in the Essenes and very ascetic Christianity, and like sex was not even thought about, let alone, I mean, you didn't even need to push it out because it was so far away.
Why was that, do you think?
I think it was, as a teenager, I think I was very confused about my sexuality. So I was never really a girly girl. I used to hang out with the boys, and my friends were boys, and I stripped motorbikes down when I was a teenager. And
she also went to Oxford, we'll find out later.
and helped run a pirate radio station, and I mean, I was running wild with the boys, basically.
Yeah.
And of course, when they got into their early teens, they also were into porn. I mean, in those days it wasn't anything like it is now, but it was, magazines with pretty gory pictures of women.
Yeah.
And I can still remember viscerally in my body when they showed me one of these magazines, and it was shocking.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing in me that wanted to go anywhere near there. Plus, I went to a Christian school where, it's like, it was wrong. It was clearly wrong. And then, so I ended up marrying a man who I knew I would never have sex with, and I was still a virgin when I divorced him. And then I went to, so I'd been in these very ascetic yoga practices, and I was interested in meditation. And these two yogis, they were two old men with like long beards, and they'd been to India and everything. Yeah. No, meditation isn't something, you just have to do yoga, and that's too esoteric or something. Anyway, then finally I went to Oxford to do a PhD, also to get away from being a girl, actually, because one of the reasons, I mean, I was interested, it was a PhD in chemistry. One of the reasons...
Why did you do your PhD in chemistry? Because,
one of the reasons, I loved chemistry, I really did, it was like a passion, but one of the reasons that I wanted to do a doctorate was so I'd be doctor somebody, and I'd never have to be called Miss or Mrs.
Wow.
Because I really, didn't want to go there. And so I went to Oxford, and a friend, I said to a friend of mine, I'd really like to learn about meditation, thinking it was going to be, very
Mm.
And oh yes, I know a meditation centre, and it turned out to be an Osho meditation centre. So I was shocked at first. I mean, my reaction.
Do you want to explain what an Osho meditation is like for people who don't know?
Osho was definitely. There was sex was definitely included, and it was wild, and it was loud, and it was. It was tantric, actually.
Yeah.
It was tantric. And so I spent the first few weeks going there, having the very same reaction that you had when you were asked to go to from the Red magazine. I'm not having anything to do with this. Oh, but it's pulling me. I'm not having anything to do with this. Oh, but... And I went like this for a while, and then eventually I thought, okay, I have to learn more about myself. It was clear something was really moving inside. But I'm definitely not going to an Osho centre to do it. So I actually went to an Est weekend, and where it was 3 days or something, and it was quite an intensive retreat.
Is that a kind of self-development?
Yes, it was a strong self-development, and it was good. All I really remember is that for most of the weekend I was paired with a sannyasin. So I was sitting opposite this sannyasin, looking at this picture of Osho the entire weekend. And at the end of it, I thought, okay, fair enough, I give in, I'll go to the Osho Centre and see what they've got to offer. And it just opened up a possibility to be listened to be understood, to be allowed. Like, there was so much allowed. And it was terrifying and fascinating, and it opened a door. It opened a door to myself that became more and more compelling. So I spent a lot of time there learning.
Where was that?
That was at Medina, just outside of Cambridge, in Mildenhall.
Yeah.
And so I actually ended up after a year leaving Oxford and going...
So you didn't become a doctor?
No, I didn't. In the end, I didn't need to anymore, did I?
Yeah.
So I had an MSc, and I went off and went to Medina and lived there, because it felt like it just felt like it called me so strongly. And yeah, so I lived there for 18 months, and then I hoped to go and live in Oregon, and then everything kind of dissolved. But it put me on a pathway that took me face to face with my sexuality, that made me realize I had been really avoiding it, pushing it away, not wanting to look at it. And so, yeah, it gave me a doorway to feel more whole, more me, and to discover and not be judged in that, and to be able to have spirituality and sexuality for the first time ever. Yeah. So that was how I came to Tantra originally.
And Osho now obviously is controversial with the
and
documentary
so.
that some of you will have seen. And
rightly so. I mean, some of the things that clearly did happen were very, very off.
Yeah.
And my personal experience of being there was very much one of, it really helped me open and grow and find my innocence. And it actually led me away from sexual abuse, interestingly, because my marriage actually had been very abusive sexually. And distorted, because everything was kind of twisted up. So it gave me a sense of... It gave me the freedom to find out who I was.
Yeah.
Now, it's true, lots of other stuff was happening, just as it is actually everywhere in the world, unfortunately. That's sad.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take away... The experience I had was one of opening.
Yeah.
And being able to find myself. And I guess it probably informs my work, because having realised that things happened that were really not okay, in my workshops I try and make sure that things don't happen that are really not okay, and try and keep, make sure that boundaries are really kept. And I think that's not always so in the Tantra world. So that feels really important to me, to keep the workshop space safe and clean, where people can explore who they are without being preyed upon by anybody.
Because we were talking about this earlier, this time that we're in at the moment, where the pain between men and women is very strong, with Epstein and Pellico, and just the stories of men's behaviour to women has, obviously not all men, but has been extreme lately. And I know that in my world I've got some female friends that are turning away from men altogether. Could you speak about that, what you think is happening in the world at the moment, and what's playing out? Is the answer to turn away, or you would suggest there are other ways, I guess?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think what I see in the world now is that yes, there are extremes. So there are what I grew up with porn has gone to a way bigger extreme, and it feels like it has almost encouraged and given permission to some men, to behave in a very abusive way towards women, to have no respect for women, to not see their innocence, and to lose that. It's not even respectful to themselves, because they haven't found their own sexuality. They've taken it on from the manosphere and from needing to be big and occupy that space. And of course, inevitably, lots of women have turned really away from that and want nothing to do with men whatsoever. And somewhere it feels like it's the seed of it was there when I grew up, but it's got wider and bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
And has more labels on it somehow. There weren't the labels when I was young. And of course there wasn't the internet, which tends to promote the labels as well. What I came to originally, after I'd done my whole journey and come to a place where I felt good, was that I actually really wanted to give that back to people, to create spaces where women could feel safe and men could feel safe to explore their natural sexuality. And that is what we try and create, so that we create this space in the middle where people really feel safe to discover their sexual being without anyone telling them who they should be or what they should be. And discovering how they can relate with themselves as women or with themselves as man, with other men and with other women. So it doesn't actually matter whether they're heterosexual or homosexual. I mean, it doesn't. That doesn't matter at all. But that they can feel their own innate sexuality and juice, and how is it manifested with men, and how is it manifested with women, and let themselves discover the innocence in that. And I think what has come very strongly, particularly since the Me Too movement, is that there's another group of men who are terrified of getting it wrong, and who are terrified of being one of the group of
predators,
men, of predators, of being accused of being a predator, of being accused of going over a woman's boundaries. They're so terrified that they are afraid even to ask a woman out or show them their attraction. And then I see a group of women who are totally fed up with the men kind of being afraid of them. So it's gone like, it's all got so terrifying and scary that there needs even more to be a safe place in the middle where people can find ease with their sexuality and be allowed to make mistakes and be allowed to discover themselves. So, it feels awful to see both extremes and for people probably not even to know that there's another possibility.
Yeah.
Because it's not...
Well, most of us do not grow up with healthy sex education or any education around relationships or communicating. I often wish that we had, sort of quadratic equations at school. Someone had sat us down and taught us how to have tricky conversations or to even understand, to say that I need this or please, could you listen to me? All these things that we were never, ever told.
Just how to say yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean...
Oh, well, let's talk about that, actually, the yes and no. So quite a few of you here have been to Jan's workshops. For those who don't, so the first time I did it, and I was, honestly, it's hard to overstate how petrified I was. I didn't eat for a week. I lost half a stone. I was on the toilet constantly. I was and I thought I'd get there and everyone would be swinging off the rafters, these kind of sexual gurus, and I would be the only repressed convent schoolgirl in the corner. And for a while I thought you were looking at me like that. I thought you and Frida, who's Jan's husband, who also teaches, I thought you were looking at me going, she's poor girl. And I was, you get so insecure. But actually, so much of that first week there was no swinging off any rafters, but so much of it was about practicing saying yes and no. And it's amazing how much is bound up in those two simple words and how difficult it can be to say yes when you actually want to say yes and no when you actually want to say no. Do you want to talk a little bit about how important that is in the Tantra that you teach?
Yeah, but I also want to hear more about your experience. I think that's really important.
Yeah, happily.
So yes and no. I mean, they're the first words kids usually.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And yet they get muddled up, and so people say yes when they mean no, and no when they mean yes. And of course, what it means then, I mean, it's totally understandable. That's important to say. It's totally understandable because no becomes a very dangerous word because when you said no as a kid, your parents usually weren't very pleased with you. And when they said no to you, it usually wasn't because they were pleased with you. So no becomes, I'm not going to be loved, I won't survive. It's almost an existential threat.
Yes.
So that lives on in us.
Yeah.
So no is a really scary word for a lot of people. And because it's scary, they often don't want to say it to anybody because that might scare them too. They want to say it or hear it. So nobody wants to say or hear no. And yet, if you can't say no when you mean no, that means your yes is completely untrustworthy, and it puts whoever you're with in a really risky position because you'll be saying yes to something you don't want. And then, who wants to be connecting, having dinner, kissing, having sex with somebody who actually doesn't want it but they're afraid to say no? Actually, that's a horrible position to be put in. And when I ask people that, unless they've misunderstood the question, people don't usually put their hands up and say, yes, I'd love to have sex with somebody who doesn't want it. I mean, that isn't what we want.
Yeah.
So learning to use no as a piece of information, to welcome it, like, oh, wow, great, they can say no. That means I can trust their yes.
Yeah.
And that means I can be much more playful because I can trust them to say no when they don't like it. So then you don't have to be walking on eggshells, making sure that you're not doing anything they might not like because they'll stop you and say no if they don't like it. So it is really an important word. And so is yes, because actually a lot of us have suppressed our yes as well, because when we said yes to things, that was disgusting, we were a slut, we were too much,
Yeah.
we were all kinds of things, you know. And to say please, not only yes, but I really like it, is to, I mean, that's admitting you like sex, and sex is bad and wrong, so, you know, we definitely don't want to go there. So getting back to the ease and the clarity of those words is important. And of course that also means being willing to be with all the feelings that arise when you say those things. So if you say no to somebody, they're going to have feelings, and that means I've got to be willing to sit with your feelings.
I hate that.
I say no.
It's hard, yeah.
It's hard, and yet, that, you know, that's what makes us
better than the alternative. Yeah,
It's absolutely better than the alternative.
Yeah.
And a big part of Tantra and my workshops is us being willing to be in connection with all the feelings we have and welcome them all.
Yeah.
So that we don't push anything away. It's all to be used and learned from and softened into, so that we can be whole. Because if we're going to shut out our hurt, and we're going to shut out our sadness, and we're going to shut out our anger, whatever we shut out, we're not whole. We have to be whole. We have to be allowed to be total and full.
And be with all the feelings, even the ones we don't like. Yeah. And then also to be close to another person means being with them when they're in their true feelings, and not going, oh, I can't handle you when you're like this, or saying, because of what I realised in the yes and no's, how twisted I was with all of it, saying yes to be nice when really it was a no, saying no because I thought good girls shouldn't say yes to a request like that. There were so many layers between. It was almost like I didn't give much thought to what I actually wanted. My brain went straight into what is the appropriate answer for this situation. Yes, no. And I remember the first time, it was such a simple exercise. You would ask each other, would it be okay in this instance to stroke your arm? A man asked me that. And I didn't want him to, but I said yes. And then he was stroking the arm. And then I did get the courage then to say no. And then my whole time in my head is, you've broken the heart of this man. Like a drama. The ego, actually, to think that he would, that was such a rejection. And at the end of the exercise, he actually thanked me for my no, which really confused me. And I said, I thought you'd hate me, because I thought a good person just gives someone what they want. And he said, no, exactly like you said, because it means I can trust when I'm with you that you look after yourself, and that actually makes me much more relaxed. And that blew my mind, that to say a no wasn't an unkind thing, it was actually a kind thing. And that the other thing that you mentioned in the workshops is this idea of, am I honouring myself and am I honouring the other person? And every time I'm saying a lie, whether I think it's a white lie and a kind lie, I'm not honouring myself and I'm not honouring the other person. So in a way, no good can come from it.
Yes. So how did that go in that first workshop? How was that for you? How long did it take you to actually say yes and no? Did you get to that by the end?
I did. Well, he was my first no, and that would have probably been on day 4. But then there was another time when a man asked if he could stroke my face. It's not all just like stroking of body parts. There's lots of other things happen in these workshops. And I remember wanting to say yes, but then going, no, you can't say yes to that. This is a man you don't know. Why would you say yes to him stroking your face? And it was that, again, that as a woman, I wasn't supposed to want touch. And that would be naughty or bad. So noticing sometimes I also said no when really it was a yes. So I got, this is still something I get caught up on, even with friends, not just with partners, but with friends, of trying to be a good person. And it's always a work, it's just a constant work in progress. But what was so lovely about the first Tantra retreat was the fact that it really gave you the chance to practice these things, and the consequences are quite low. You know, this is Neil from Reading. We're not going to be best friends for the rest of our lives. So I can practice saying no, and he can practice saying no to me too. You know, like you've almost got this shared agreement that we can, it's like the school that we never had for how to relate to each other. And there was such lightness and innocence comes from that. Because at the beginning, I think also, I thought the whole thing was about who did you fancy or who didn't you fancy, and who fancied me and who didn't fancy. You know, all this just like it was very schoolgirl. But also, I guess that's the reality of often what's going on between the sexes, that kind of assessment. And at some point, it just all fell away, and we could all just be men and women together and brothers and sisters. And yes, it could be sexual, but it also didn't need to be. And it was so sweet, and it was the easiest. Because I'd always thought I was an introvert before that point. But it was my first experience of feeling so easy with a group of people because I wasn't pretending, and therefore it wasn't tiring.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And I think, when I think back to the early workshops I did when I was learning at work, I can remember thinking, like sitting down in a circle at the beginning and kind of with all my judgments.
Yeah. I thought every bloke with a necklace was a pervert.
Yeah. And then by the end of the week, just feeling in love with everybody. And learning, actually. One of the big things I remember learning very powerfully was how important it was to work with people I didn't fancy.
Yes.
Just to work with as many different people as possible. How much more I learned when I let myself explore who I was in relation to that one. Because when I was with people who I thought I fancied, they were my type. And of course, you know, it was only going, it was all going down the pattern. Yeah. And so autopilot kicks in pretty fast, and then everything's going the way I'm expecting it to go, and they're expecting it to go, and it's, neither of us are learning anything. Yeah. And it often wasn't very interesting then. So that broadening out and getting used to discovering people and being open to people. And I think people do learn that, even in the first week. Did you find that?
Yes.
Learning that actually my heart can open to everybody. And that doesn't mean I have to have sex with everybody. It doesn't mean I have to have sex with anybody. Yeah. But I can see you, and I can be authentic with you, and I can connect with you as a human being, and as a man or a woman. I don't have to hide my sexuality. I don't have to hide what I feel in your presence. And that is so, as you said, it's so easeful.
And it's very different to the online dating culture, which is, I think, encourages that judgmental side of all of us. Like, I don't like the look of him or her, and it's that kind of almost like box-ticking exercise. So I guess the question is, where does Tantra, which is such an ancient spiritual approach, how can it help people in this modern time of dating and ghosting and loneliness? And you know, as I was saying, I've got female friends that are turning away from men. There's also a lot of younger people apparently turning away from sex. So what do you think Neo-Tantra can offer people at this time?
I think it's vast, what Tantra offers. In terms of intimacy, relationships and sexuality, I think it offers people a very safe space to go at their own pace, to never have to do anything, to be able to discover who they are and what they want and what their natural sexuality is, when nobody's making anything wrong or nobody's pushing them in any direction. And so they can rediscover innocence and delight and also explore all the disgust and all the shame, and there's space to explore everything. So it's a safe place to explore, and that includes becoming very much in connection with your body. Yeah. Includes becoming very much in connection with your sexual nature and discovering what that looks like, and becoming connected with the sensations even in your body, which a lot of people have turned off.
Yes.
Actually, and then becoming able to, as we said earlier, to be in connection with the feelings, and to have lots of possibilities, to be courageous, to trust yourself, and to be able to step forward in courage and discover that the world doesn't drop away if you have feelings or make a mistake. And so it gives you, what happens by the end of the first week of Living Tantra 1 is that people have more spaciousness usually. They have more aliveness, more capacity to feel, and they just feel bigger. They can face anything. So it's not even now just about sexuality or intimacy. They can be more real and be more connected in the world, whatever is happening. So it's like people just drop into themselves more. And of course, if you take that into sexuality, it means you can be more authentic, you can be more intimate, you can have more fun and play, and you can be more alive on every aspect of your being. And it connects this very earthy, powerful sexual nature directly with your heart and directly with spirit. So it becomes, sexuality can become something that's beautiful, that's intimate, that can go slowly, that is like something that you would love and is delicious, and not something that has to be feared and pushed away from. So you can, I think it gives it's a safe space to rediscover the beauty that there is in sexuality when you let it have its full place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily even rediscover, but discover.
Discover.
Because for me, that was the first time. So I went to Irish Catholic school from 4 till 17. And my sex education was, if you get raped, you had to keep the child. If you got pregnant after being raped, you keep the child because that's what God wanted. That's literally my memory of sex education. And so there was never an idea that sex was a beautiful thing and a lovely thing, and not much was said, and what was said certainly wasn't. The nuns were not pro-sex, and so I was in my 30s, like late 30s, by the time I came to you. Maybe 39, and that was honestly then. You know, I'd had partners and I'd done my best to muddle through, and I had, but Tantra was my first time of really feeling, oh, this is beautiful and there's nothing wrong. You know, there's nothing wrong with this. And I think we're in a world that's got so many extreme views around sex. We're supposed to be at it all the time. You're supposed to look a certain way in order to have it. It's also wrong and only allowed in these certain circumstances. Men are predators. There's such a cacophony of unhelpful messages. And your workshops was my first time of experiencing just the absolute innocent, lovely hotness of it all.
Yeah, because it's still juicy.
Yeah.
And when you bring that juiciness and the divine all together with your heart, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying there was a moment when you also realised no one could tell you sex was wrong again.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because in my whole journey going like from teenage years, so there was this disgust, and then opening to sexuality, and then discovering I liked sex, and then somehow it went wrong over and over again, so I'd get shamed for it again, and then so I went backwards and forwards. Oh, yes, it's good. No, it's bad. Oh, it's good. Oh, no, but then, it's bad. And that went on for quite some years until... And I was still working, going to Tantra workshops and exploring myself. And then eventually, I was in Switzerland, and a therapist pointed me towards Amaji. And I loved being with her. I mean, it was really a divine experience.
Does everyone know Amaji? Is she called the Hugging Saint?
Saint?
Can you just say a little bit about who she is?
Indian saint, and she's everyone goes to her, and she's just pure love, really.
Louis Theroux did a documentary about her once, and he started crying as soon as he was in her arms. There was something about...
She hugs everybody who comes. So when I went, there was probably 2,000 people there, and she sat on the stage all evening, and she just hugged one person after another.
Yeah.
The whole experience was pure love. And I really was taken by it. And I was even more taken at the end of the evening. I felt like my heart was blown open somehow. And at the end of the evening, I went in to help clear up, I think, or something like that. And then at some point, the stage curtains opened, and Amma was on the stage, sweeping the stage, just like totally ordinary. And I thought, wow, this is really something. And I looked into going to India to be in her ashram. And when I looked into it, I discovered that she keeps the men and women separate. I don't know if she still does, but certainly back then she did. So that was probably, I don't know, 40 years ago or something. She kept the men and women separate. And so I thought, no, that's not going to work for me. And she felt to me like a goddess. Like she was really an avatar of God. And then I realized, so even if God tells me sex is wrong, I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah.
It was like,
what an amazing moment.
It was a strong moment of realizing this can't, I feel so much of the divine in my sexuality that it can't be pulled apart again. Nothing's going to pull it apart. My path this lifetime is to dance in the beauty of that and bring it all together. So I didn't go and live in that ashram. And here I am. Yeah, it was a powerful moment because I had really gone backwards and forwards many, many times. There was a long time when I could walk into a room of like 100 people and I could pick the man in the room who definitely would not have sex with me. All manner of bizarre reasons. I mean, it got really bizarre after a while. Really? So there was a lot. I had to do a lot of work. I really had to do a lot of work on myself to come to a place where I felt really whole and at ease and comfortable with my sexuality.
Yeah, because you've been studying this a really long time and teaching for 27 years, but studying a lot longer before that, I think, which
for sure.
makes sense of why your workshops feel so safe as well, because there's such depth in there. You've faced up to everything within yourself, I imagine.
Yeah. Like 20 years of...
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to be a Tantra teacher.
No.
I was a research chemist. I had no need to be a Tantra teacher. And I loved chemistry. It really wasn't my ambition. And there came a point where it was just obvious that, like, life was saying, that's the way you're going. And
what did your family think of it?
I think at the very beginning they were horrified. And then, I mean, they weren't thrilled when I left Oxford. I wasn't supposed to do that. And then when I got more deeply into it, I think there was a lot of confusion. They didn't really understand what I was looking. They knew I was looking for something. They didn't really know what. I think they still think I'm a little odd, a little strange. And yet there is a sort of recognition, maybe more, that what I'm doing, that I'm doing something that matters and is valuable. None of my family have ever come to one of my workshops.
Good, Jan. That would be weird.
It would be weird, wouldn't it? It would be weird. Yeah. But they have asked me they have asked me for advice about sex.
Yeah.
So maybe that's good. Yeah.
I remember you saying once that the oldest person who'd come to one of your retreats was in
87.
her 87.
She was 87. She probably still is the oldest, actually. And she'd never had sex. And she came, she was so open. She came because she said she really wanted to experience an orgasm before she died.
Wow.
And she did.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, she was so brave, and she did everything. I think the only thing she couldn't do was shake standing up without holding the wall. She needed the balance for holding the wall, but she really went for it. She was so brave. I think everybody who comes to the workshops is brave. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to show up, to walk in the door, and then to go step by step. And we do go step by step. We start slow. You wouldn't be ready on day 2 without doing day 1. You wouldn't be ready for day 3 without day 2, and so it goes on. You know, it goes very step by step, and I make it as clear as I possibly can that, you know, there's like a huge range of how you can do any exercise. You can be as adventurous as you want to, and you can be as slow and cautious as you want to, and they're both equally valid. And sometimes it takes more courage to be slow.
Yes.
And I had to learn that. In the beginning, I would want to go fast, and then I would just go so fast that I didn't feel anything.
Exactly.
You know, it was a way of actually shutting everything down.
Yeah.
So there has to, I want to create a space where people feel safe in the same room to be as adventurous as they want to be, and to be as slow and cautious as they want to be, and know that they will be loved and accepted whatever they do, and to see each other in that. And it's so touching to watch over and over again, to watch people unfold and gradually realize that they don't have to be a certain way to be loved, that they can just be themselves, and they can turn inwards and discover what they want, and feel what they feel, and show it, and be authentic and vulnerable. And be loved in that. And be allowed to make mistakes and not be condemned and judged and thrown out.
And like you say, we all do it so differently. I remember you saying that for some people, their biggest growth would be to say no, and to really exactly go so gently and say no to most things. And for someone else, their growth might really be to lean in and say yes and try things.
And they're both, everybody has to look inside to find where they want to, how they want to receive each exercise. And what they can't do is look around and see if they're fitting in with everybody else. That doesn't work. Everybody has to find what's true for themselves moment by moment. So that means being in contact with themselves. And actually, most of us aren't most of the time. You know, we're not really taught to be in contact with ourselves.
Let me just check the time. Yeah. What would you say is the thing that people get out of your work? What's the kind of feedback that you get about how their life has been affected?
I think, I mean, it depends which piece. I think of Living Tantra 1, the first piece, it's like finding their aliveness, finding a sense of seeing beauty everywhere, like really having their eyes wide open, seeing the world in technicolor, everything.
It actually does feel like being on drugs. By the end, honestly, like the leaves, I remember standing for about 20 minutes, it felt like just looking at the leaves, everything becomes so beautiful.
Yes, seeing beauty everywhere. It's like really opening up to themselves and the world. So there's a huge opening at the beginning. And that really helps communication. I remember one lovely man who came, and he really did come to try and come out of his shell sexually. And he was a lecturer, I think in engineering or something, and he called me a week or two later and he said, I'm just amazed. I thought it was going to just affect my relationships and my sexuality, but my whole work has changed. I can relate to my students in a totally different way. Everything has changed. And I get that kind of feedback a lot, where people don't realize it will affect their whole lives, because it's affecting their whole being. So, of course, it affects their whole lives. When people do the whole training, and they do the whole series of workshops, and they're with me for 18 months, I think that what that gives them is a much deeper sense of belonging, landing in themselves, being able to be tender and vulnerable and listen, to communicate, to be able to be in relationship in a completely different way. So it creates a sort of stability. It's still, the training still has its highs, like Living Tantra 1, but it also has a lot of really grounded work in how do I just stay here and meet you, and stay here with you. So I think it lands people in their lives with a sense of authenticity, and I think often people reevaluate their lives after the training, and sometimes they might do a job change because they realise that what matters to them has changed. So they've just come more in connection with themselves. Is there anything more you want to say about your journey? Your journey is so rich.
The thought I'm just having is that every time I went, so I've done so many weeks with you now, but my thought was that for most of them, I was lying to my mother. So at one point, I said, I'm off on a communication course. And she said, what kind of communication? And I said, I don't want to talk about it. And then there was a lot of yoga and meditation, and you know, I don't think no one was buying it. But just thinking about how hard I found it to own up to people in my life that I was doing Tantra retreats. And with the friends that I did say it to, there was a lot of, ooh, you know, just shag anyone, just snog anyone, to do blah, 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 blah.
Do you have 12-hour sex?
Yeah, exactly.
Orgasms that last 12 hours, like Sting does.
Any day soon it'll happen. But yeah, so it just, I guess, that's what I'm thinking of, and realising how lovely it is to be able to sit and have a conversation with you about this, and now for it to just seem so normal. But remembering that when I started, it really didn't. It felt like this very strange, beautiful, slightly embarrassing thing that I was doing, but I also couldn't get enough of it, like, it was just because it was so beautiful. And somebody mentioned this at we did another event in London, that what she wasn't expecting was how much community comes from doing these workshops. So you've got at least 500 people sort of that have come through all of your training and that are part of this community, that are very in touch with each other, and it's such a beautiful thing. Like, it's life-changing stuff.
Yeah, because people, I mean, you must have this in your own life, I know you do, that the people that you're on this 18-month journey with become like, they know you better than your family.
Well, they know bits of you that your family hasn't seen, for sure.
Yeah, that your family will never know.
Yeah.
And the friendships that develop from that drop really deep.
It's true.
And so that it stays as a community. And then even people who weren't on your training, they were on a different training, because you've had the same experience, you have a shared language, and you know you can be authentic with each other. And that's really rich.
And it's such a different way of getting to know each other, because I could have had very intimate experiences with someone, but I would have no idea what they do for work.
Yes.
Or even where they live. You know, all that normal stuff, what do you do, and it just doesn't really apply. Yeah.
So did you tell us a little bit about, I mean, when you wrote Love Me, that kind of that was coming out, when that was going to be published.
So Love Me is a book about my journey to, I use the word journey, Mum hates it when I use the word journey, it's the banned word, so about me exploring how to have a life with love and sex if you don't get married and have children. What's a different way to build a life that isn't lonely, I guess, that was full of love and community. And I realised that I had a lot of hang-ups around sex, a lot of fear around men, actually. I was one of 3 daughters and went to a convent school, and boys were these sort of alien creatures. And so, there was a lot of stuff to unpack. And Love Me is the book I wrote about all the Tantra retreats I did and various things. But until that point, most of what I'd been doing was still kept secret to my family. And so at some point I had to say to Mum, there's going to be a book. It's going to have sex in it. And she said, oh, okay. And And I said, is that all right? And she, and she said, write what you want, Marianne. And I said, oh, good, thank you. And she said, but you're not writing about yourself, are you? And I was like, yes. And she said, people don't want to hear it, Marianne. And I cried for about a month after that. I just signed the book contract, and my mum had, anyway. So then she knew at some point I was doing these Tantra retreats, and then the question then came of whether Mum would read the book or not, and I really didn't want her to. And she said, you could score out all the sexy bits. So my sister, so there wouldn't be much left. So then my sister and I were kind of joking she'd get like this CIA redacted version of the book. And then it turned out that my sister actually gave her an early copy of the book without me knowing it, saying, please read it. If you hate it, don't say anything. Because I was stressing so much, because I love my mum, I'm very close to her, and it felt strange to have this secret that I was keeping. So my sister gave her the book and said, if you hate it, please don't say anything to her, but if you like it, I think it would be a huge relief for her to have your blessing. And Mum and I live on the same road in London, and I was sitting outside a cafe, and Mum walked past, and she sat down, and she said, I've read your book, by the way. And I didn't know she had it, and she said, I was shocked. I was like, oh, God. And she said, I had no idea you were doing all of that stuff. And I said, I know, Mum, I just didn't know how to say it. And she said, I don't know anyone else who would be brave enough not just to do what you did, but to write about it. And she said, I never talked to you and your sisters about sex. No one had talked to me about it except to instill fear. And this book isn't about fear, it's about pleasure, and that's very important. Wow. No, you're incredible. And then she basically dropped her mic and walked off. And I just burst into tears. I couldn't believe it. It was I get shiver. It was such a blessing. And I also then got a letter from my Irish auntie. So all my family's Irish Catholic. What I'm doing is just so far from anything that I have come from. And I got this extraordinary letter from my auntie, because I worried I'd be bringing embarrassment to my Irish family as well, writing such a personal book. And she just wrote this amazing letter about how our Celtic ancestry revered women and revered goddesses, and we were powerful, and how far we've gone from that time, and how books like mine are part of, reminding us of who we are. And it felt, so it was a very scary thing to do the Tantra and then to write about the Tantra, and it has been such a worthwhile thing to do, not just for my own life, but I see that I do feel like it's affected the people around me in terms of what we're able to talk about with each other. And my mum and I have conversations now that we wouldn't have had before.
That's really beautiful. And I know a lot of people have come to the workshops because of that book.
Yeah.
Because the way you write is so easy to read and so entertaining and so deeply touching that I think it does really give people a good sense of what the workshops are like, because there's a reality to it. So it's beautiful.
Thank you. And my other thought, I think, when I went, is that I thought everyone else was sorted when it came to sex, and I was the only one who wasn't. I really did, and it took me quite a long time for the penny to drop, that this is an area that most of us have not had healthy education, healthy role models, and so many people have got pain around sex or shame or fear, and it's so normal. So to be gentle on ourselves with that. So I think through doing your work, I feel much less weird than I used to. If we put that on a poster, do Tantra, you'll feel much less weird. Oh, yeah. So time for questions from the audience, if anyone has anything for Jan or me about Tantra, about love, relationships, anything really. There's a mic if anyone needs it, or just raise your hand and Jason will bring you the mic, or you can just talk loudly. Oh, come on, everyone, thanks.
So this is to, like, both of you, actually. It's what you just spoke about. Exposing what's important to you, sexuality to your family and friends, what you might say to the rest of us if we wanted to be able to do that.
Oh, that's such a good question.
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't know. It's such a big one, isn't it? Have you got any thoughts?
Yes, it is a big question, and I think a part of it comes down to, if I think about what I would say to my great-grandmother might not be the same that I would say to my sisters or my mother, come to that. So I think what's important, and this is actually a really important principle in learning about your sexuality too, when I honour myself, I tune into myself, and if I'm with you, I honour you by tuning into you and not pushing your door down. So if I'm totally turned on and I feel that you're really not, I'm not going to push you to meet me where I am. I'm going to see you. Now the same goes with a conversation. If you tune into somebody and you know you can feel that they're not open to talking about sexuality, they don't want to go there, then pushing them to go there is actually not honouring them or you. So there's something about going very slowly, and which means making yourself vulnerable and tuning into them all the time, that you're not pushing them beyond where they actually want to go right now. And being willing to stop when you find the resistance coming back, that, actually you can feel their contraction. And you know what? I'm sensing this isn't really the right moment to talk to you about this, so I just want you to know that anytime you're open to that, I would love to talk to you more about it, but right now, should we just have a cup of tea and talk about how are the petunias going? So that you leave a space for people to be able to.
I hear you. I guess when you get to the place where you were just talking about where you're going to
Publish a book.
or you're going to put out your work, and you're well known. I imagine I don't know when you decided to tell your family and friends who maybe might think it was weird. Whether they just came across your work or you decided, okay, this is the time. Because then it's like a decision, do I let my book be published and let my mum find out?
Yeah.
Or do I, probably want to speak to her first, ideally. But, But then there might be a fear of, actually, what if she doesn't accept me anymore?
Yeah.
It's a big fear.
Yeah, I genuinely worried that my Irish family would sort of shut me out. I would cause them so much embarrassment. I really genuinely worried that. And I worried that it was selfish for me to write a book that would potentially make people uncomfortable. Because Ireland's a really small country, and it just, in England I could feel more anonymous, but in Ireland it doesn't feel like that. And people amazed me. I don't think I gave my aunties warning, but my mum, I did say, this is this book and this is what it's going to be, but without details. And then she read it and was amazing. And my aunties, one of them gave me the weird backhanded compliment of like, you're funny, I didn't realise. So they were amazing, but I guess it's a real concern. And Jan's advice about going slow makes sense, and I also understand that that's maybe difficult if you do have a body of work that you're wanting to put in the world, and because I have a friend who is a sex therapist, and that was a really big thing for her, being open on Facebook about being a sex therapist, because she also comes from an Irish Catholic background. And I don't remember how and when she did do it, but she did do it, and the family didn't die. But it's hard, it is. Yeah.
I think, we have a perception that people will reject it.
Yeah.
And actually, I think the truth is that most people would like to feel comfortable and easy. And when they realise that it's not sort of sleazy and horrible, when they realise it's innocent and connecting and actually very spiritual and beautiful, then I don't think there's much rejection. I think the difficulty comes when you talk to people who have a filter, who've decided whatever you've done, they're going to put it through a sort of sleaze filter.
Exactly.
That gets more difficult.
Yeah.
And then just to look after yourself, I think you have to not say too much.
Yeah.
Probably.
Mm.
But I think there came a point in my own life where I just felt, and it probably was around the time when I thought, nobody can tell me sex is wrong. I know it's just good. It's just okay. That it's beautiful. That I felt so at ease in myself. And I think when you land in that ease in yourself, it comes out a different way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thanks, that really hit the nail just at the end, what you just said as well.
Yeah.
Like all of that was helpful, but
That-
somehow
yeah.
the idea of it being embodied and safe
Yes.
and actually knowing
Yeah.
this is really right for me and this
Yeah.
is how I need to live authentically, but
Yeah.
feeling the safety inside feels,
Yeah, it does. It makes a huge difference. And I would say that's actually something that Tantra has given me, actually. That I think it is something it gives everybody, ultimately, a sense of feeling safe in their own being. And being able to be. The world doesn't become safe. I often say this, the world doesn't become safe by being able to dodge this and that feeling. The world is safe, feels safe, and you feel safe in it when you know you can be with anything that arises. And that is a feeling of, that is just, And I really think Tantra does give people that because it gives you so many opportunities to be courageous and trust yourself and tune in and show up.
And be with difficult feelings and realise they don't kill you.
Yeah, that you don't. And, you asked earlier on about how does it relate back to the original Tantra. And we use one of the original texts, the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. And we tend to use a contemporary version of it that Lauren Roche produced. And sadly, he died a couple of weeks ago. I was so sad to hear that. But he has made some really beautiful translations called the Radiant Sutras. And in there is one of the sutras is about feeling, I wish I knew it by heart. You're shocked, you're powerless. Everything inside is crumbling. And you realize that the one who has been there and seen much worse than this is still there. And there's a sort of sense of landing in the midst of difficulty that makes you inhabit the world in a completely different way. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Thanks. A quick sort of factual question was just what percentage of men and women do you get to come on the courses, which is a lead-in to then the more useful question. Toxic masculinity gets a lot of attention, so how do we get more debate about what is a positive masculine in society? And counter to that, feminism for me is sort of trying to just make women more masculine, to take power and control, equal power and control, whereas actually for me it should be about how to achieve power within in a more balanced way between masculine and feminine. If that makes sense.
Yeah, we might have to get you to say the questions again. Let's start at the beginning. So we aim for a close balance of 50% men, 50% women. And we usually get very close to that. That was the first question. The second what was the second one?
How can we get a more positive debate about positive masculinity as opposed to toxic masculinity?
Well, I think that the ripple out effect of the workshops and Marianne's books as well, and my book as well, I mean, the more we get this information out, the more that conversation about positive femininity and positive masculinity spreads out. So I don't think there's really much talk in the groups about toxic masculinity because it's so not relevant to what we're doing there. People might be there because that's where they've come from, but the people who are in that, who've been wounded by that, are there specifically because they want something different. So the focus is inevitably on something different. And I think, that the result on the wider world of people doing workshops is also that there is a ripple out effect. So the changes that happen in people notice, and it ripples out to their friends and family, even if they don't have a clue what they've been doing. When we change ourselves and when we show up in the world, then there's a ripple out effect. So it just needs to spread a lot. And I guess that's partly why we're here. We're talking about it. Do you want to say anything about it?
That's something that's been in my heart and thoughts a lot with the news lately is I would love to hear from men about how it feels when they are reading and hearing about Epstein and the Pellico case, and lately there's an absolutely horrific website that shows awful things. But I would love to hear more from men about what that feels like as a man reading this news, because sometimes it feels like there's just quiet. I know I hear a lot of I hear in my female friends and also reading female reaction to, my gosh, what is going on. And I would love to hear from men just how you feel when you hear these stories. That would feel like really positive masculinity to me. And it's not that anything needs to specifically to be said, but just there's quiet is what I've been feeling from the men. And I guess that's also part of what we're doing in the workshops, and that we can do for each other is have more opportunities to talk about what we're feeling about anything, and how this is for me as a woman, how this is for you as a man, and to be listened. Because I think there's also such fear of saying the wrong thing and there being a takedown for saying the wrong thing.
Yes, I think that's really big. And that's come with social media, that there's this fear of
saying the wrong thing. Yeah.
That makes life very difficult, especially for kids, actually. For young people, I think that makes it really hard, because they haven't found their place in the world. They don't feel safe in the world, so of course they want to fit in. And if everybody's doing that, then they want to do that too.
Yeah.
Be seen to fit in.
Was there a part 3 of that question?
Which is just about how I think feminism is almost trying to sort of make women more masculine and gain and take power, when it should be about selling the feminine concept, which is a balancing force with masculinity in society. And so we're just anti-ing the anti rather than actually creating the positive balance. And is there any thoughts on that?
Personally, I would say that it's just really important to create a space for women to be allowed to be themselves as women, and to be allowed in their femininity, to also allow their masculinity to flow when they need to, but to be able to not have to hold on to that, because I think there was a kind of time, and I think even I grew up in it, where there was almost a power to being a masculine woman, to be able to be powerful and to be better than any man, and to feel so to have a space where we can reclaim the feminine side of our femininity, which is also powerful, to be allowed to live and dance in that. But that, of course, means reclaiming our sexual nature, because if we shut that down, we shut down a big part of our power. So I think that permission is really important. I'm not sure I ever really was a feminist. I always thought I could do everything. So that piece didn't really get in my way. What do you think? What do you think about? You probably have more connection with feminism and.
There's been so many waves of feminism and different takes, and I guess it's responding to whatever's happening in the world at any given time.
I think we have to learn to be ourselves.
Exactly.
Let our woman shine out and be who she is. And I think it's also important to have spaces where women can meet together and talk without men there. And it's important for men to have spaces for them to meet together. And we do that sometimes on the workshops. So that space gives women a place where they can let their power shine with their vulnerability. And it gives men a space where they can be vulnerable together, which is incredibly powerful for men. So I think there's a lot of healing in that. I'm not sure if we've answered you enough.
It's a big topic.
Thank you.
Is it you? Thank you.
Hi, Neil from Reading.
I'm Neil from Reading. Oh, really?
I went to a single-sex school, and my sex education was boys don't have sex with boys, and that was it.
Oh, wow.
But have you ever thought about how important, because, I mean, adult men, adult females are normally coming on your calls, but it's to train young people. Like sex education at school should be including the yes, no.
Yeah.
Not be judgmental.
Yeah.
It's not black and white, it's grey.
Yeah.
And encourage that. So, I mean, you're the leaders of the...
Well, some of
so what do you think?
there are people who've done Jan's work who are now working with schools and working with sex ed in schools, because exactly it needs to be starting so as young as we can possibly start to teach people yes and no, and this is my body and this is what feels good, and no thank you to that, and it's
about sexual types and different sexual so it's not being right or wrong, it's just being raw and stuff. But I mean it's come out quite a few times in this conversation about the manosphere, the social media, and this doesn't seem to be very much getting to correcting that. And I suppose we've had 100,000 years of development, and we've massively grown as a society because our numbers are so much bigger. And social media now is capsulating that in milliseconds, what's taken thousands of years of development and change and thinking. So that's my point.
Yeah, I think that piece is beginning to percolate into the younger people, I think. It's probably true that for the older people in workshop spaces, in group spaces, it's more difficult because they've grown up with that, this is wrong, this is shameful. And that's one of the reasons why in almost all the exercises we do, we work in groups of 4. So we always have 2 men and 2 women working together, so that you're never relating to one person, and you've got men and women to relate with, so that you can find your own sexuality without in innocence. So it can be, it's like, you might be turned on by the same sex or the opposite sex or both. And actually, my experience of being with people in that field over a very long period is that once people relax and discover themselves, to some degree, most people are somewhat bisexual. It's like the probably homophobia is the strongest thing. Women usually are much more comfortable touching each other anyway. But that sense of homophobia tends to melt away between the men, and it is exquisitely vulnerable and beautiful when it does, so that they become used to being brothers, touching each other, having connection, and that if they feel turned on and sexual, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I'd started, had the knowledge they do now, back
Yeah.
being, 13, 14,
Yeah.
15. I think my life would have been very
Yeah.
different.
I suspect that piece for very young people is a bit easier now, isn't it? I think that's more. I think it's more accepted now.
To love all sorts of people.
Yeah, to love the same
Yeah, I
sex
think
or the
so
opposite
too.
sex. I think that
Yeah.
that probably is become more acceptable, more standard.
Yeah, but it's just also understanding the bigger thing rather than just being the sexuality. It's understanding. I mean, for me, sex was always about penetration and orgasm.
Yeah.
You know, I wish someone told me that it wasn't
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
A long time
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
Yeah.
that's the sort of things, and for women, they are slower to get going or whatever
Yeah.
it is, and understand that.
Yeah.
So it's things like that when I 13,
Yeah.
14, 15 would have been
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah.
To have.
Yeah. It takes so much pressure off.
Yeah, and so there must be a, part of your thing is about teaching, whatever it is, starting young.
Yeah.
You're moulding the next generation, I think.
I think I can't remember. I write about it in the book, but I think it's Holland where their sex education, or that it's kind of sex and relationships starts at 5, and it's with really sex is introduced within the concept of how you feel about other people. So we'll all have friends, and you like your friends, and then at some point it might be that you have extra strong feelings for certain friends, and it might be that your tummy goes a bit funny, and it's all.
Wow.
So then by the time when sex and physical touch is introduced, it's already being done in this context of your relationships with people, which I think is so beautiful, and not what we have in the UK, where it's body parts and don't get pregnant and don't sleep with men and don't, so then, and Holland has the highest rate of positive first sexual experience.
Wow.
Yeah, and also a quite low rate of teenage pregnancy. So it's just it seems like a very healthy, sane way to, explain physical love.
Also, that is actually really, really good, because actually, from a child's perspective, they will understand a bit more what's not acceptable from an adult.
Yeah.
So that's another very big spin-off from that. So,
Yeah.
So that's more likely they can talk about it and may have words for it.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
nowadays, a lot of them may not have words for that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Thank you. Oh yeah, you're right here.
Sorry, mate.
Oh,
I got the.
let's get the microphone.
We'll come back to you afterwards. Is that okay? Yeah.
Just a quick question. Just
Yeah.
when you have an ability to talk about boundaries and communicate your own boundaries, it creates a power dynamic if you meet somebody in a sort of sexual situation who isn't able to communicate their boundaries, even if you're able to give them that space. I just wondered how you would go about tackling that power dynamic.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think then it's when it comes down to acknowledging that power in yourself, and in doing the work where you learn about your own boundaries, that means you naturally learn to tune into yourself. And then the next stage of that is learning to tune into another person. Of course, that's where workshops are incredibly powerful, because you've got lots and lots of people to practice with, to practice tuning into them and being able to check out reality if they do, you're tuning in and you're feeling that it's like this, and then you can ask them, is it like that? How did you feel afterwards? So there's always a chance to talk about things afterwards and share a bit. So learning to tune in to and put yourself in the shoes of another person is a very big part of the work, and that is what people need to learn to do, especially when there's a power imbalance. Yeah.
Do you want to go next?
I just wanted to ask you whether you thought...
Yeah, you
Okay, I just wanted to ask you if you thought that the spiritual aspect was indivisible from the work. Because obviously now I've seen a lot of interesting sort of sources on Tantra which talk about it in terms of neurology, chemical processes, various other things, about the effects it has the effects in the body, positive effects in the body, and neurologically what good effects that has. But obviously there's as you mentioned, there's a spiritual aspect to it too, and I just wondered whether you felt those two aspects could be divided, or whether ultimately they had to be taken together.
Well, I think from a tantric perspective, because one of the definitions of Tantra is the weaving together of all that is, if we're weaving everything together, we don't want to throw spirituality out any more than we want to throw sexuality out. So naturally they flow together. And my experience is that for most people that happens very naturally, and it happens, it's a bit like you find your own sexuality, but you also find your own spirituality. You find your own connection with the divine. And there was actually fairly recently, a few years ago, a woman came for whom the word God, like any kind of religious spirituality, was like almost made her want to vomit, because she'd grown up in a sort of very religious cult situation where it had been rammed down her throat, and so it was quite scary for her. And it happened very slowly and naturally that dissolved away, and she found her own innocent, natural spirituality, and then could celebrate it, and was so pleased when she had, because it wasn't what she expected. I think something similar happened for me, actually, in a way, because there was a period when I felt really, certain parts of spirituality were pushed out, and then they just flowed back in a more innocent, natural way. So I would say they are indivisible, but in the same way that your sexuality is indivisible from you, and it's your unique way. So your uniqueness runs through everything. I think it often happens that only one half of a couple comes, and in fact, I encourage only one half of a couple to come, usually at a time. It's not, I don't forbid it, but I realise that it is very much individual work, and people get much more when they do it on their own. So it happens very often that people come without their partner. Now, sometimes the partner wants to come to another workshop, and then they do it, maybe a month apart or something. And sometimes their partner thinks they aren't interested, or isn't interested and doesn't come. Then there's two situations. One is, yes, you go, I'm fine with you going, but I don't want to know anything about it. And then there might be open hostility to it. I don't even want you to do it. I think one of the reasons I wrote the Living Tantra book was to give people an experience outside of the workshops where they could get a really good taste. In a way, the Living Tantra book takes you through what you can, in everyday life, the kind of lessons that you can learn in the workshop in a totally different way, but it guides you through that connection with yourself so that you can connect with another. And I think when you come back from a workshop, what's important isn't to tell people how wonderful it was, or tell them they should go, or push them in that direction, but to let the lessons that you've integrated in yourself naturally flow out, so that your love flows to them more easily, and your authenticity and your connection flows to them more easily, and your ability to be with them and hold them in love comes. And I think that ripple does then come out. And I know it's happened many times where somebody's given somebody the book, and then they've said, don't want it. And then they've put it on the bookshelf, and then it's disappeared from the bookshelf, and then then later there's been questions about how you might explore something. So I think the book can be really helpful, and in general the attitude of people towards their partner is incredibly, that's the most important thing. It's not you telling them what you did, it's you being the new person you are as a result of that. And that's what really flows out. And that flows out to all humanity in every interaction you have. If you let yourself keep filling yourself up and flowing out. I was going to say something else and it's disappeared. Oh well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. It's lovely to hear. It's lovely to have that respect for others, actually, that yes, I want to go. And I know, I recognise and see that you don't, and I have no intention of pushing you there. That's a really good beginning. The other thing that's important, I think, when couples come separately, is I often encourage couples who come separately to bring a photograph of their partner and put it on the altar, to really dedicate the work you're doing for yourself also to the relationship, to know that you're there not for some hedonistic, experience. You're there to build yourself into the kind of person who can love your partner even more, to give them and meet them even more. And that, I think, when people come with that intention, that is what flows out. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi there. This follows on neatly, I think, from the last question. I'm the one at home, and I'm simultaneously really hoping and also really petrified that my partner's going to come on the training. Because as you've said about how you build love and open-heartedness as well as juiciness and sexuality and spirituality, and they know everybody there better than I'm ever going to know him. So how the fuck do I chill and trust him and you and everyone there and stay at home?
Yeah, that's not an easy journey in some ways, and yet the very fact that you've asked that question publicly reveals your courage and your trust and your vulnerability. And I think the thing, we do couples work. We did a couples retreat it was probably only a week ago, actually. What brings couples together is meeting each other in vulnerability and being willing to express what's really true without blaming or accusing. So I think you've got a really good start. And if you carry on communicating, and he will learn to communicate more and more, and will learn to listen to you and be with you in your fears and your terrors. And my guess is, just listening to you now, my guess is that he wants to develop his relationship with you deeper and deeper. And I think as time goes on and you learn to trust that, it gets easier. And, in some way, you'll be going through your own workshop whenever he's away. Yeah. And I would encourage you to use that experience to love and honor yourself and to look after yourself and to see what you want. I would really encourage you to journal and to write, really let yourself write down or dance, to be in touch with what's moving in you so that you use the experience and the days when he's away at the workshop to come deeper and deeper into connection with yourself. Because the worst thing you could do is to open a bottle of wine and numb it, or switch on the television and numb it. You need to find your way into yourself to be there and meet him. And hopefully you've got the Living Tantra book and you can begin to work through that, and that will guide you on that journey so that you can also help meeting him there. And it's a courageous journey on its own, just to be in that. Yeah. Does that help?
Somewhat.
Is there anything else you want to ask? Because I'm totally supportive of relationships, and my intention is never to break up a relationship or see it broken. So anything I could give you that would support you in that journey, I would give you.
I think it's, as you say, continuing to deepen the trust in you and him and everyone. So maybe there aren't questions that I can ask right now, but I love the invitation to kind of be on my own retreat, which I actually was in this last week you were together. I happened to take a week off, and so I was very present, which was with what was going on for myself, and so we could have extremely honest and vulnerable conversations when he came home. So maybe that's a practice to attempt to continue. And I guess the one part that remains really hot for me is that thinking about whatever is going on in the room, that connection that probably is happening in the room, and how to surrender to that. I think, as you say, it's a courageous place to sit and know that's happening. And I know that you can't say it's not going to happen, and I know there's no guarantee. So I guess there's just something about, using that as an opportunity right from the outside. I don't know if there are any more questions in there, but I appreciate what you said.
I think it might help you to remember that I actively discourage workshop participants from getting into a relationship with each other, because it's not a good ground for relationships. The relationship is with the whole group, and that's why most of the exercises we do in small groups of 4 rather than one-on-one, and it's why I encourage people to work with everybody. It's absolutely not about trying to form a relationship. It gets in the way for everybody, actually. So I think it will be important for you to talk about really agreements, and for him to ask you what you're afraid of, and to make agreements about what your intention, both your intentions are, and make agreements also about relationships outside the workshop space. There's a lot of things you can put in place to hopefully hold you a little bit stronger, a little bit safer, and it's still a courageous journey of trust. And thank you for asking your question. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks, Jan. Just a question about early developmental trauma and the place of that. We haven't mentioned trauma very much. The place of that in the workshops. I've done LT1 last October, which was great. I'm right in the middle, because I'm 76 now, but it's only in the last 4 years that I found the right kind of therapists to work with, who I feel meet me and see me, and there's a lot moving. There's still a lot that's stuck in my body. I can feel it very strongly. And now I have a very amazing biodynamic craniosacral therapist who's I see every week, paying her mortgage. But I love her, she's amazing. And so I'm wondering, I'm very drawn to carrying on with the LT 2, 3, and 4. I also have trauma about sexual trauma, date rape, and even with Osho, who I told you I was with, there were some very difficult things with the therapists saying humiliating things to me, even though there was a hugely positive side to it as well. So with all of that, I'm wondering, I almost got the idea from my therapist that she was saying perhaps it's better for you to carry on with the healing that you're doing with me first, rather than going into the more sexual aspect of it. But then there's something else in me that's saying, can that all be included? So yeah, I've just got that question really. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. So the answer in a sense is very individual to each person, and it is very much about you feeling where you're drawn and where's important for you. I would imagine, I know that the majority of people who show up in a workshop space have some kind of trauma. Now, how that's... and it's not a trauma workshop. So how that trauma shows up and how it can be held is the important piece. And in general, that can be totally integrated and managed. When it doesn't work is what usually so well, when there's a shock trauma that is unknown and is so unknown that people go too far too fast. So the general guidance that I would give to people in all the workshops all the time is to go slowly. So that if you're heading towards the edge of something that's going to be traumatic, you can titrate it. You can go a little bit and then come back. And you don't go here and then realize, oh my God, I've just jumped into into the ocean, and actually I thought it was a paddling pool. So yes, there's space for it, and yes, there's support, and it's not a trauma. It's not a trauma session. So there are assistants there who can be with you. There's an encouragement to go slowly. And sometimes, yes, it can happen that people... I mean, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I couldn't get somebody out of the shock they were in. And get them back kind of in the room. And then there's a way of... Once they're back, then there's a way of managing it. And, okay, how do we look after you? And, then you get some extra help. And we have to manage... How can we make it so that this can feel safe enough and it's not too much? And it is very individual. There would be some people, I think, whose trauma is so alive and active and easily activated that it probably is better that they do more somatic experiencing work or some kind of trauma work first before they come. Yeah. And I also know there's been people who've had the most horrendous traumas which has healed hugely because they've been in the workshop space. So it's not one or the other. Yeah. And I think it's more about how activated it is in you at the moment and how ready you are to be with whatever arises.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think I just have to keep trusting my body, because in the end,
I think that's true. Yeah.
It knows what it needs. Thank you for illuminating that. Thanks.
I think another aspect to the question, in a way, is, especially when you ask other people, there's not many people who've done the journey. Most therapists haven't done all their own work with their sexuality. They haven't healed their own sexuality. So sometimes you're asking the wrong person. And early in my own journeys, I remember coming out of a workshop and feeling, maybe somewhat shocked, ashamed of what I'd done, thinking everything was wrong, and going to my therapist, and I told him a lot of what I'd done, and he just looked me in the eye and said, I wish I had the courage to do that too. And everything rippled back into place. But it reminded me, yes, this is a courageous journey. This is a hero's journey that we're doing. And most people haven't done it, so the only person you can really ask is you, or a therapist who's done their own sexual exploration and knows from the inside. Yeah. Great.
We're coming up to time. Yeah.
I think it's connected. It's always connected. The word sexuality and sexual, and for me, it brings up quite a lot of. And what I find fascinating is
I want to just put sensuality
yeah.
into the room, rather so we are sensuous beings, and every single sensation we experience surges all this energy, excitement and fear and all of that. And I suppose just reflecting to what you said about the sensation of the separation that we have, it's not really a question. I'm really sorry, it's not really a question, but it's that feeling of being wholly in ourselves and to really feel our boundaries so that we can then experience life beside each other. And that feeling of having self-confidence and trust in knowing who we deeply are, like when you said about really dropping into feeling embodied, to be able to then move through sensations and experiences that others bring.
Yes, that's exactly true. And it is true for many people who go through the workshops that sensuality is, for a long time, all that really matters. I think what tends to happen is that as people open to their sensuality, they come into contact with their sexuality, whether they do anything with it or not. And it's like, because we've shut it out so much, it's not uncommon for people to sort of deny it's even there, actually. I'm an asexual being, in some way. And but as you come into connection with yourself and ease with yourself and become more embodied, it arises, your sexuality arises naturally, whether you do anything with it or not. And just because it's a sexual workshop, or a workshop focused on sexuality, or including sexuality, or even if we're doing an exercise specifically about sexuality, doesn't mean you have to be sexual. Yeah? Just because we're doing an exercise around touch doesn't mean you have to touch or be touched. You will always have your agency. You never, ever have to do anything you don't want to do in the workshop, or hopefully for the rest of your life. So it's very much about you being with where you are now, meeting where you are now, and of course, sensuality is exquisite, and just discovering that is a great beginning. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. One final question, and then we're at time.
Hi, it might be a quick one.
Thanks.
Do you know anyone who's working? I'm more interested in the energy side of it, and working with the moving the energy and that side of it. And I'd be interested if you know someone who does that work and who's really experienced, supports that work.
Who works just with energy?
Well, I mean, I guess the whole thing really, but I'm more interested in energy issues and moving energy and what's happening around that and the effects of it, and how to get support with it where I might be struggling, that kind of thing.
I probably do. Maybe I'll see you at the end, or maybe you give me an email. I'm sure I do know people who work.
Yeah, I could email you and say a little bit more. It's a kind of like, I wasn't sure if it was an appropriate question for this group. But
I think
it's quite personal.
I mean, of course, the energetics of everything that's happening is there all the time.
But do you teach how to do move the energy during the sexual practice of the work and that kind of tantric side of things? Yeah. So you know about that? You're aware of that?
Yes.
Is that part of your work?
Yes, but I think it happens more... It arises, and because we're tuning in and becoming more embodied, that movement of energy naturally arises in some of the meditations, in many of the exercises. Rather than teaching somebody how to do that, that arises as a result of what we're doing. So it's there, but it's in a slightly different focus.
Right, so when it arises, you're going to find out all kinds of things about what's going on in your energy body and your physical body and your trauma and what you're holding and your bracing and everything. So once it does start arising, things come up, and there can be ways that it's really challenging in certain places, and those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. I'm interested in.
I mean, I would say we do deal with that. Yes,
Yeah.
I think that is dealt with in the workshops.
Yeah. I'll email you. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. We're at time.
We're at time.
Thank you for the brilliant questions and being so open. And thank you, Jan Day, for being Jan Day and for being Jan Day in Bristol at the Alma Theatre tonight. Thank you.